I wanted to get my time back, my freedom back to not be in that cubicle for 60 years.
Welcome back, investor, to another episode of Passive Income Adventures, where we encourage you to take more adventures and we bring people on to share their stories about how you can figure out how to pay for those adventures. So, we talk a lot about passive income, how your dream life can be built through investing. I know there are a lot of scams out there, and it's nice to just have people who have actually done it or actually doing it who can share our stories. And that's exactly what we do here. So, what your passive income adventure looks like is totally up to you. If you want to retire early, sit on a beach, or you want to start a nonprofit or keep working at a job or business that you really love, it's totally up to you. We just want to help you reach financial freedom so that you can make those decisions. So, the guest today is Bernadotte Charles, or Bernadotte Charles. I don't know. Do I pronounce it in the French way today? But yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Now, let's kick us off with telling us a little bit more about your background. Where I'd love to hear about the pivot points about where people were doing the normal thing. They're just working a job. And it's so fascinating here, like at what point they decided to go off the beaten path and do something a little bit more unusual, less mainstream. Sometimes it's because their parents were doing it. Sometimes it's so they were raised that way. Sometimes it was just like got sick and tired of doing things the way, and they realize I can't keep doing the same thing and expect different results when I'm trying to build wealth or financial freedom. So walk us down that path of where you started and where you pivoted into this really less traditional path.
Yeah, so it's a good question. So, as far as where I came from and how I got here, I'm from Haiti. It's a small island in the Caribbean. And growing up, I was told, hey, go to school, get good grades, get a good job, and you'll be fine. So, after coming over here, that was my focus. Yeah, I'm going to get good grades in school, get a good GPA, and I'll be set. And so, went on that track, went to college, got my degree, graduated, got my first job working for the Air Force in OKC. So, I was like, man, this is it. Like, I've done all this work, and now I'm here, got a big boy job with a salary, and now I can just cruise. Where was I wrong? Because so I started working and I realized, man, what I envisioned in my head when I was in college, when I got to the cubicle, it was like, oh, this is not really what was playing in my
Yeah.
head during college all these years. But I kept doing it. I went and got a brand new car, got a new Camaro. I'm like, hey, I worked hard for this, so I deserve this new car. Bought this car. I was like, man, this exciting. But I was struggling. I was struggling because I was paying rents, paying this car notes. I had college debt, right? And so here I am in this Camaro, smiling, but I'm drowning on the inside, right? So about a year later, after I bought this car and I was driving around, I got into a car crash. And honestly, it was probably the best thing that happened to me, right? The car got
Yeah.
totaled. And at the time, I was angry. I was mad. Man, like, why did this happen to me? I worked hard for this. I deserve this. I went to school. I stayed up late studying at Starbucks, math, calculus, all these things that I did. And then I got into this accident. The car was gone. But after a while, after I got over the angriness and all the emotions, I realized that I had a dream in college to pursue real estate, right? I've always been into like investing in real estate, but I never really pursued it. Seriously, it was just more of a thought in my head that I had for a while in college. And after that happened, I went back to the books, bigger pockets. I started to really dive deep into maybe I should try a different way to pursue this, right? Because buying the car was not a wrong thing to do. It's just how I did it. It was just premature. It was too early in the process. And I didn't arrive anywhere yet. I was just working. I had just got here. And so that was the trigger. So, okay, I'm going to dive deep, read books, podcasts, meetups, and then I just started buying properties because I wanted to get my time back, my freedom back to not be in that cubicle for 60 years, right? And now I'm here doing it year over year, buying properties.
It's an all too common story. We have some bad thing happen to us, and then suddenly we look back and say, "What am I doing, and why am I doing it?" And the ability to introspect, to retrospect, and make different decisions. I find that's a really common theme with the guests on the show and the people I know in the passive income adventure community. I just have to stop doing things the same way we've always done it. But I'm curious to hear a little bit more about your process from transitioning out of the cubicle and into more of a entrepreneurial and investing mindset, because one thing I've noticed is when we get the passive income bug, and maybe you can relate to this as well, we tend to get really impatient and we just want to be financially free and we just want to retire early. And maybe we don't actually want to retire, but we do want some time to think and be like, okay, what's version Bernadotte 2.0? I struggled a lot with that when I decided I was going to do this. And then it took another 5, 6 years. And before we could quit our job. And then when you quit your job, you're like, okay, now I have actually no money. But when you step away from that job, it's a huge pay cut. And so Tell me about that process of actually walking away from your job and being able to spin up your business in order that it could support you and continue to grow to give you true financial freedom where you really are job and business optional.
Yeah, and I will clarify. So I'm still working on my at a job right now, but I've been
Mm.
able to shift my mindset and leverage my job to acquire more properties to build my passive income. And right now I'm at 17 doors and also some two buildings that I bought over the past 2 years. And so
Mhm.
really it's more so how do I leverage sustaining this job quicker to get out of it?
Yep.
Because I hear people say, "Hey, I want to keep my job ASAP. I want to do it today." I'm like, if you use it as an asset, as a partner, use that income over to stocks or real estate to grow that, you can leave even faster because now you're using that job to
Mhm.
fuel the investment. So I've been doing that, and I've already matched or surpassed my W-2 income, and so now I'm just like, you know what? Let me just double it and then get
Yep.
out of there. And so it's all about leverage. So if you have a good paying job, I would say find a way to leverage that gig to get out of it and it'll be a faster path than quitting from day one and struggling to build that income over time.
And that's exactly well, kind of what happened to us when we met so my husband was working at W-2. I was basically stay-at-home mom doing real estate business. So all of my profits went back into the business because I didn't need it because I had a W-2 basically supporting us. And then what ended up happening is when we were able to meet his income from the W-2, when he left, we cut our income in half. Right. And so that
Mm.
was a really difficult decision to make. They made it for us. He got laid off. And I was like, okay. I was wondering how we were going to handle that, cutting that income in half. But what you're saying here during that transition period, I guess it depends on how much you enjoy your job. So can you tell me more about what you do for your day job, how you're liking it, and how you're thinking about that you don't want to do it until you're old, be in the cubicle forever, but tell me about that plan and how you like your job and how you're planning ahead to be able to step away from that job, whether it's next week or 30 years from now.
Yeah, no, for sure. I've been in the cubicle, I think since 2014. That's when I first got
Mhm.
into the job force. Since last year, I've been thinking about exactly why do I want to quit my job? And the main reason is time to be able to see my daughter and my wife and spend more time together. And so being in the office it's impossible to do because I'm out for 10 hours a day, having to commute back and forth and on a regular basis. So now I've been able to be remote with my job. And so I've been able to meet, okay, now I can see my daughter every day and my wife. I can see her just wake up, have breakfast together. And so I've been able to be in the middle to where I'm working a W-2, I have passive income, but I'm also at home right now. And so now I'm gonna leverage this W-2 even more because I'm already home. So now I can leave in a couple of years, or if I get laid off, it's not a big deal because my account doesn't change because I'm still getting income every day, right? It's more so about my mindset. I wanted time. I wanted to be home. So found a gray area so now I can build upon that and even leave.
Yeah, and leveraging that regular reliable income, I think in our world is really underrated because we talk a lot about quitting jobs and all that, but being able to see that as the blessing and the resource that it is for a lot of people. You went to school, you studied hard to do the job that you're doing. So it's not like you're slaving away back behind in a kitchen somewhere, at a low end restaurant. It's like I know chefs who love slaving away back in a hot kitchen. So it really just depends on you and where you're going. So how have you been able to keep that mindset, especially once you've already replaced your W-2 income? It becomes very difficult to stay motivated, or do you find that you're feeling a lot of purpose and passion at work and it helps you stay motivated to just keep going?
It's a good question. Yeah, I don't know if it's purpose and work. I think it's more so the fact that I know that I can leverage it. So I think it's more of a
Mhm.
business play on my end. I'm really seeing my job now as a partner. It's OPM in my sense because I don't need it per se. So it's coming in so I can use that even more. So it's really more of a business play, not so that the enjoyment of the job. But
Mhm.
I've seen folks who have left their job and have to come back after a couple of
Yeah.
years because they did it too early. And so I'm like, you know what? I know I've met it, but let me just double it because there's no going back for me. Once I leave, it's pretty much going to be that's it.
Yeah, that's a smart play. I feel like my husband and I, we used to say that a lot. Like, you can always go get another job if we leave, but we've become unemployable, and not just because of our bad attitude of working for yourself, but your skills slip and you have a gap in employment history and you have to go back and recertify or you have to catch up on, especially if you're in a technical industry. You just get to the point where you're unemployable. And so we really had to look at that very hard, especially he was close to 50 when he left. And that's
Mm.
one of the hardest times to get a new job if you are unemployed for whatever reason, either by choice or by force. So waiting a little bit longer and that mindset shift right there of your job as a partner. I've never heard anybody phrase it quite like that before. The job always seems to be something they resent, and it's a time thief and a freedom thief. But my business could be considered that, but I love doing the business and I feel like I'm partnering with my business. So I've never heard that about a job before.
Yeah, if you think about it, I know folks who have left their jobs to be full-time flippers or wholesalers, and in a way, they're still it's work, it's a job. They just don't see it that way. If you don't flip a house, you don't get paid, and so it's the same concept. And I think when you see your job as a partner, you then begin to appreciate it more because
Mhm.
now I can use this thing to really build a good foundation to be able to build that income to walk away. So it's really just a mindset shift to be able to see that as a leverage point and not just be down about it every time.
Yeah, and I notice as my kids get older, they don't want to spend as much time with us, and so the extra time that we've gotten is we do spend a lot of time with the kids, but it wasn't as much as we thought it was going to be when we first left. We went on a 3-month hike. We hiked Arizona, and we spent a lot of time in a single file line, not able to talk to each other. And at night, you get into your camp and you would just go to sleep. So a lot of the experiences that we thought we were going to have that were just going to be these amazing bonding experiences and spending so much time together just didn't pan out quite the way we thought. And other things are better than we thought, and other things are not as good as we thought. It's been a really enlightening experience. But one thing I've noticed is that people like us who are along this path that just have a tendency about thinking about things differently, whether or not it's reality. Sometimes you have to test it out. But is this a character trait that you have had? You mentioned that you were born in Haiti, and I noticed that a lot of times that decision to get up and leave where your comfortable surroundings and move to a new place, whether it was their parents who moved them or they who moved themselves, that almost comes with a guaranteed, now I'm strange and I make bold decisions. How has that influenced your personality and your decision making?
Gotcha. Yeah, it was my family that moved us here, and it was a big change. And I'm not sure how they did it. I could never imagine living somewhere, go to a new place where you don't even speak the language to start over. So that bravery is really has inspired me to go even further in my career. But that being said, I grew up in the idea of going to school, get a job, and I get it, right? Because my parents, that's all they knew is to work for a living, and that's perfectly fine. I just think for me, I can go a step further and leverage that to achieve something that's not even in our thoughts back then as far as my family. And so it's been more so if they can leave a country to get here and start over, I can definitely build a business and just be passive and build this time freedom that everyone talks about. And it seems so far fetched or it's a scam but it's not, right? So if you build it properly and take your time to grow in it, it's possible. And so it's more of a journey to grow and push yourself to get to a place that's not even possible in a mindset of a family that came from nothing. And so now we're here and I'm making all this progress. So it just takes time.
Yeah, I actually learned French from a man from Haiti. He moved to the United States. He did not speak English. It was crazy. And he just up and decided he was going to go to school in the United States. And I had taken French in school before until you really get into a situation where you can practice the language a lot. So he spent a lot of time like working and helping me with my conversational skills because he needed somebody to talk to, right? And
Yeah.
the funny thing is you watch this kind of stuff turn around in the long run. I'm now able to use that French to tutor French speakers in English as a volunteer project to help them with economic empowerment. So I find that people who are in the position where they are just able to say, you know what, I'm just going to go do something big and crazy. You don't know those ripples that come out of that decision that can affect people many years down the road, which is I can directly look at what I'm doing right now with my volunteer work to that experience with him making that bold decision. And so it just reminded me a little bit about what you were talking about there with your journey and how much that has impacted your life, your career, and your kind of thought process. So thank you for sharing that with us. We shift gears a little bit now to talking about what you're working on right now. So, what is your superpower?
My superpower, I would say my power is one is numbers because again, I went to school to be an engineer. So I love numbers. So when it comes to real estate, I naturally just love looking at deals, underwriting deals. So I love underwriting for one. The other one is team building. And so I love to build teams around deals. And so as I find deals, I love just to call, hey, so and so, I found this opportunity. Would you be interested in partnering up? And so it's more so that a collaboration to do something that maybe not possible by yourself, but with partner, either a JV or syndication, is doable. And so I would say it's building teams and underwriting, doing the financial modeling. Now I realize maybe I should have went to school for an MBA or like more of like a finance background because I just love finances. Like I didn't know that could be so fun, but I went a different route in school. Yeah.
Those might be the 2 most important skills you just listed. I actually have a like a keynote presentation that I have where you can go down one of 2 paths. The only 2 things you can't really delegate in investing, especially real estate investing, one is financial acumen and the ability to maybe not do your own underwriting, but at least be able to read and make decisions based on financial. It's a finance business at its core, but it's also a people business. So the other thing you can't network out, you can't delegate out is that team building and that networking. And so the fact that you are combining both of those, it's actually fairly unique in the space because most people down in the spreadsheet feel like they're too introverted to go network and vice versa. So that's an unusual combination. Have you realized that's unusual and how have you been able to leverage that?
Yeah. So I've met folks who love underwriting too, who love spreadsheets. And if you put them in a room, they just freeze up. And
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, I grew up a little bit as an introverted person, but at one point I have a switch and I can go to a room and just talk to everyone in the room, find out exactly what you do, what is your fear, what do you want to accomplish. Like I'll talk to anybody, right? Because I just love the interaction part of it too. But that could be in a spreadsheet all day and just be fine, just looking at numbers. And so it's a weird skill. I've realized that. I've also been able to leverage it as well to look at deals, talk to people, raise capital. And so yeah, it's just who I am. It's not common, and I get that, but I'm enjoying it. So
Yeah, and I know some people who did major in finance and they work in finance, and then when they switch over to real estate investing as their business, they're really burned out on finance and they're sick of it. And so maybe it's almost better that you went down a different path and work, you can do something completely different. Because sometimes they feel like they're doing finance at work and then they're having to come and do finance in their own business. And it's a lot. It's like a computer programmer doesn't want to come home and help his family fix things that are broken, right?
that is true. That's a good point.
Yeah. What kind of engineering do you do?
So I went to school for like software engineering on work, but now I'm more in the project management kind of field.
Oh, another great skill to have because of asset management. Like think of a flip or something that you're working on or a commercial building that needs some construction and that project management, PMPs tend to be really good at asset management, but even if you're not a PMP, you just have that process design and that process background, that comes in really handy. I feel like the trifecta going on here of skills.
And I will say, so I didn't mention operations, but that's probably the number one thing is operations because I just bought a deal and I naturally became the lead asset manager on that deal. And it just comes, I don't know, I just think process, right? Everything's about process, how to improve, be more efficient. So now I'm doing that role on that deal and I love it. And yeah, as an underwriter, I naturally went to managing numbers and property manager. And so I don't know why I got these skills. I just know that I'm good at them. I enjoy them. And so I'm just trying to balance and not do too many of one thing and kind of be centered so I can really focus on what I'm good at and just stay down that one path, right? So
Yeah, that I was thinking about that because that trifecta of skills is really handy in a startup where everybody's wearing too many hats and everybody's doing too many things. Generalists are really highly valued in the startup space. But as you grow and scale, if you had to pick just one of those skills that you could focus on you being the technical producer of that skill, and the other two would fall back into more of a I know how to do this. I have done it. I don't do it now, but I can still make decisions based on that information because my past experience. But this is the thing that I do. This is the thing I specialize in. What would that be?
I wish you didn't ask me that question because I wouldn't answer it. But I think if I'm going to be honest with myself, it's going to be operations. I don't know. I just love being able to have a team around me and look at what we're doing and really find out how to make it more efficient or how to pivot, adapt to what's coming along. And so if you'd asked me this before, I'd say, oh yeah, I just love underwriting, but I think it's just operations, leading a team of people and to get to a target. It's what I enjoy.
Yeah, wow. I've found so much value in all three of those skills coming together. But and larger teams and commercial properties and larger teams, they typically come in more than one person. So somebody who's coming from that more generalist background can specialize in something and then they bring in somebody else and the conversation level is higher. For example, you probably heard of this, who's somebody who's raising capital, but they don't really know that much about the numbers or maybe not even that much about buildings and construction. And they're trying to raise money and someone will ask them a question. They're like, let me connect you with our finance guy. And I feel like it's right there in the pitch deck. You have a financial summary page or pages in your pitch deck. At least be familiar with your own deck before you go have investor conversations. I think there's a lot of a cop out of you don't have to understand numbers because there's a specialist for that. But you'll never be in that position because you have that background. So even if you end up leaving it behind as your technical skill, you'll always be able to be a financial manager, even if you're not a financial producer. And that's going to be valuable forever.
Yeah, and I would say, yeah, I've met folks before who bought me deals, and it was an amazing pitch. I'm like, all right, man, that sounds good. Let me see the underwriting, and I could all see all the red flags. So I'm like, all right. So as a person who understands numbers, you will never be scammed or get into a bad deal because upfront, if these things are just too aggressive, and so it's really important to at least know exactly how to look at numbers. And for me, it just comes natural.
Yeah, I don't like doing it, but early on, I don't know who I can't point to a specific experience or conversation with this particular person that kind of drilled it into me that you have to know the numbers. I think I did hear somebody on a podcast say this is at its core a finance business. And I was like, oh, I guess I better learn how to do spreadsheets because I didn't want to be making decisions just based on gut feel. We talk about know and trust a lot, but the underpinnings, like you said, you're seeing red flags and be able to say, I'm going to force myself to learn how to do this so that I can be a financial manager. I took a financial management class in college, and that I think also changed my outlook because they were giving us reports from the finance team. And then we're making decisions based on those reports. I was like, oh, this is financial management here. I'm not the one actually researching and creating the report, but I know how to read it and I know how to use it. So I think that was part of the shift. Forced myself to learn how to underwrite. I really hate it, even still to this day. I'll teach other people how to do it. I make myself do it, but I don't think I'm ever going to enjoy it because it's been long enough now. I should know better. But it sounds like in your case, you really like it and you would almost, from your response to that question, have a hard time giving it up if you really needed to focus on operations.
Yeah, and I've had folks, I guess, offer me say, "Hey, man, I'll do the underwriting for you. I'll do everything pretty much for you. You just go out and do other stuff." And I'm just like, "Yes, but I want to do it." And honestly, if you think about it, like what you're buying is the P&L. If you buy anything really, retail, apartment complexes, a duplex, you're buying the profit and loss statement. So if you don't understand that, then you don't know what you're buying because that's what
Yep.
you're buying to either improve it. And so to me, it's important that I know the core of that P&L to understand the plan to see if it makes sense in the first place.
There's a lot of value add opportunity buying a business from a business owner who does not understand that concept. So I love that you bring that up because there are a lot of times when we're looking at a deal where we have to reconstruct that P&L from information that they give us and a lot of times it's out of their head, it's not accurate, we have to go research it. And that's going to drive the price of the asset down when their P&L is not good. And so for us it creates a lot of opportunity. It's just always shocking how many business owners, especially of commercial properties even really have no idea what's going on in their business. They don't have accurate rent rolls. They don't have leases, handshake type of stuff like, oh, papers around here somewhere. And their numbers are just coming out of their head. And they only have four expenses because they're like, oh, do we need to pay this and this? It's crazy. And so have you seen that because in the single family world, we don't expect homeowners to be able to do that. But when you start doing it as a business, it's shocking how many people don't understand that P&L concept. That is what your business is about. And it's the value of your business for you and as a resale value.
Yeah, no, I've seen that. I bought a building recently, and when we asked for the leases, they were like, "Yeah, here's a box. Here you go, all 40 of them." Wait, what? Can you scan these into a PDF? What do you mean there's a box in the office? And so it's common, but then again, it's opportunity for us to go and improve and make things better. And that's actually a pretty common thing in the industry, at least 50 and below as far as unit count. It's pretty
Yes.
popular for women probably just kind of do it by themselves, pen and paper, boxes, it's in the office. I'm like, yeah, that's not the way to do things. So
Yeah. At 50 and below for sure, like the mom and pop commercial sector. Yeah, there's just a lot of poor business practices there. I think my favorite story was there was an owner we were buying our first it was a 50 unit actually. And he was driving through my city. Like he was from a different state, but he was traveling and happened to be driving through my city and asked if he could drop off the paperwork. And he came to my house and sat at my table and we went through the box of 40 leases because probably 10 of them were missing. And literally notebook pages with the little chads on the sides where he'd torn it out of a spiral notebook of pencil records. And I was just could not believe it. I basically had to recreate the whole
Wow.
thing. Yeah, but you know what? We got a smoking deal for it. But that was my first introduction to how disorganized this stuff can be and where a lot of value can be added just by organized management.
Yeah, it's important. It's really all about it's operations and numbers. Those are the two main things. And so, folks don't know how to manage. It's an opportunity for you to go in there and improve on that because, yeah, pen and paper, that's no longer those days are gone. So, as far as pen and paper, 2024, if you're doing that, you gotta, you've already lost at that point. So, yeah,
We bought some that were they're literally out of their head, and we were writing it down, taking notes as they
wow.
talked. It's crazy stuff. We do get a lot better seller financing from those mom and pop deals. Once you start getting 50 to 100 units, you better be able to get a lender, right? The owner very rarely is gonna give you seller financing. So there still is a lot of value and benefit because you're gonna get really undervalued deals, better seller financing, but the more commercial or the bigger the business gets, the better records they keep and the more they know the value of the business, and it is a little harder to find a deal at those larger sizes, and they're going through a broker, and they gotta get their cut, and so, really
Right.
great deals to be found in the mom and pop space, but it's still is that an area that you enjoy, or do you see yourself, scaling past that someday?
Yeah. So, it's a good question. I think so far I've gone as high as 66. And so,
Mhm.
I'm looking to go a bit higher, if I'm being honest, but I look at everything from probably 40 to 150 in that range. And so I'm open to it. If it makes sense, then I'm going to pursue it.
Yeah, I think there's like a scale or die type of attitude. When we bought our first building, our first commercial building was 50 unit, and then the next one I was looking at was a 30 something unit portfolio. It was two different buildings. And a lot of people are asking me why I was buying it. You're supposed to be getting bigger. You're supposed to be scaling. This is a step backwards. This is a step down. And I felt it's a good deal. So I'm gonna do it. It's not about scaling. It's about getting great cash flowing properties. I'm trying to scale my cash flow, not my ego.
A good point. Yeah. So I also still buy smaller deals myself. And frankly, I make more on those deals than the larger stuff because, when you're buying a big building, it takes time for it to stabilize. It's more of
Mhm.
a long-term play. And oftentimes, as an operator, you must have family, you're not getting paid until the back end, until the exit, right? And cash flow not important. And yeah, I've seen the folks that have 1,000 doors, more than that. I'm just like making more and less than you are. So I don't care about the door counts. I know I have my deals that it's more about quality than quantity at this point. I do agree.
Well, it's a really great question that you bring up because I've noticed the same thing. Like my smaller properties that I own by myself without any partners, I get paid first. But on my bigger properties, rightly, the investor gets paid first and we get paid
Right.
last. And usually on the back end, it takes time to stabilize. And then even after it's stabilized, we're still paying the investors first. So people will call me up and they'll say, oh, I have 10 rentals or something like that, single families, and I really want to scale into multifamily. And I say, why? And they say, so I can have more passive income and spend more time with my family. And I just die laughing. I'm like, who told you that was the way it was? If you want more passive income, you should just be a passive investor. And so tell me about your passive versus income, your active income journey, because a lot of us are running a business so that someday in the future we can have passive income. It's certainly not passive right now. So how do you balance those two demands on your time to be able to say, my goal here is passive income. My goal here is spend more time with my family. You got a lot of that through remote work, which I think was clever to be able to piggyback on that. But where do you see your trajectory going, not just from a scaling standpoint, but now also from a passive standpoint, a time spent standpoint?
Great question. Great question. I started this by buying a single family home. I self manage and I bought quite a few more since then. And it's all been self managed by myself. And so I definitely enjoy being hands on with the properties that I'm buying. And then, so a couple years back, I went into multifamily syndications. And again, I just love being hands on. So I have to be on the operations side of things. And so I'm doing both in parallel, but I realize I'm getting passive income from my rentals and I don't do much work on them on a regular basis. That being said, I know folks who have left their job and they have rentals and they're bored because really, if you have rentals, you're not doing much, right?
Mhm.
It's very smaller tasks that you're doing. And so I don't want to just retire and be on the beach. That sounds fun, but I like working. I like having something to do. So to me, the apartment stuff is more because I enjoy it. It's fun.
Mhm,
And I'm not seeing it as passive income per se. It's more a replacement of my time to stay
mhm.
active in the business. But really, my end goal is to keep buying rentals that is true passive income for long term buy and hold because I love buy and hold. So I started this in 2019, and everyone I spoke to have said, "Hey, man, I had this property, had it for 5, 6 years, and I sold it, and then now it's worth X amount. I wish I never sold this. I wish I'm like, you know what? I'm never gonna sell any of my rentals. Let me just see, because if everyone sold theirs and they have big regrets, they're like, yeah, it's worth twice now, 4 times this much. I'm gonna buy and hold everything and then see how it goes in 25, 30 years because it's all about wealth and you truly only build wealth by holding properties,
Mhm.
assets really over time. And so, yeah, so I'm doing the rentals as a passive and then the apartment stuff. It's just because I love underwriting. I love numbers. I love team building operations. So it's a fun thing for me.
Yes. You bring up some really good points because I find like I am diversified inside of real estate. But when I'm raising capital for a while, I was like the multifamily girl, right? I'm raising family multifamily. People ask me, oh, you're I'm like, but I'm looking at my own portfolio and it's not reflecting the message that I had publicly. So when we designed our fund, I felt like to be more genuine and to say, this is what we're actually doing to be retired early. We do short-term lending and we hold notes. So I'll buy a single family house and I'll sell it like on a seller fine. So I'm holding the note. I'm the bank. I also do hard money loans. So those are very short term. The notes are long term, but the hard money is short term. The single family homes I consider both short and long term because they pay you so fast. They're so fast to stabilize and they're very reliable. And then so they're short term cash flow, but they're also that long term appreciation and wealth building, like you said. I sell them when I feel like they're a maintenance nightmare, like they're gonna have something expensive like a roof or a driveway foundation or it needs to be rewired. That's when I start being like, I don't wanna actually hold this one long term because it's gonna become a money pit. But so sometimes long those can do everything. But the commercial stuff is all long term for me. And I'm finding that I'm enjoying more raising capital for those deals and then investing passively in those deals. And so I'm diversifying across short, mid, long term, passive and active. And that's just something that we have to learn by going out there and trying it. But most of our investors own a couple of rental houses. They know they don't want to scale that and they want to passively invest in the big stuff because if they've heard the message, they're like, that's a new business. That's a new career. So you have two careers right now. How are you balancing that? Because you also have a family.
Yeah, so I don't sleep much, and I have my W-2 that I'm doing, and so after I do that, then I'm pretty much spend time with them, and then at nighttime, I'm just out working on the business, and so it's more so I get maybe 5 hours of sleep, maybe 6, and I'm good to go, and so I'm very active in the morning and at night as well. When they're sleeping, I'm working, so
Oh.
that's the motto, yeah.
Yeah, I hear that a lot with entrepreneurs. They don't need as much sleep. I need a ton of sleep. So does my husband. So it's like we're definitely not burning any more night oil. So that was why we kind of tag teamed it. But you're doing both. You got the W-2 and the business, whereas my husband and I split that up. He was just doing W-2. I was just doing business. Hats off to you. That is a ton of work. And it just takes a lot of focus and your ability to be able to manage those aspects of it. Like I said, you've got a lot going for you. You've got a great story. It sounds like you had a lot of great experience and just being able to take this business and put into it what needs to put into it. So walk us through the future, what's coming up from you, your bucket list, your aspirations, your passive income adventure. Like where do you see yourself in the next, say, 10 years?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So in the next 10 years, I want to keep buying properties as far as rentals, build that even more. I just closed on 6 yesterday, so I'm doing that currently.
It's a
And
lot
then
in
as
one
well
day.
as just, yeah, yeah,
Sorry.
well, package
Love
deal.
that.
And then, yeah, as well as just keep being active in the business as far as buying apartments, because then it's a fun thing for me. And back to your point, if you want passive income, I think as a GP, you should invest as well as an LP. And so I think that's the way to get both sides of the coin to where you can
Mhm.
still be a GP and have your money work for you as an LP on your deals. And so you can get both sides of the coin. So I'm doing that as well as a goal for the next 10 years. Keep buying, keep operating, keep investing either as an LP, GP, as well as buy rentals as well. So it's more of a threefold approach on my end and kind of go from there.
Do you have a retirement age that you've targeted? For me, it was like 50, 50, 50, 50, 50. And then at 48, we were able to walk away from our jobs. And I was like, oh, why did I make the goal at 40? But then we just jumped right back into it because we realized, oh, retirement is more freedom to do what you want and not just
Mhm.
plain old freedom. So Do you have a timeline for when you want to step back and slow down, or are you just not even in that headspace yet?
Yeah, I have a timeline as far as my W-2, and I'm probably 3 years out to walk away from it.
Mhm.
As far as working, yeah, I'm not gonna be able to stop working. I think I'm a workaholic. It's like one of my vices, and so I'm gonna be active doing something even after quote unquote retirement because you have to enjoy what you do. And if you enjoy it, it's not really a job or it's not an issue. So for me, it's more so about how do I, maintain my aspirations, stay active in the business, keep working in real estate, but also don't trade a job for a different job. I think that's the biggest thing is not trading a W-2 for another job. And so staying put us to what the goal was initially and balancing to where you're not bored, but you're still active and doing stuff as well. And
Yeah. No, perfect. Yeah. Workaholic, that's like the greatest strength and the greatest weakness all in one trait.
it's tough. It's tough because honestly, if it's not for my wife, I would probably just never take a vacation or do anything fun because I'm just like, all right, next day I'm thinking about numbers. I'm thinking about this other thing. And so I'm always like so active that I never really just relax because
Mhm.
yeah, my nature. I'm always on the go. I'm always going, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely, sometimes it's my curse. I go back and forth where sometimes I'm a workaholic and other times I'm a total slug. You never know. You know what's coming. So it does make it difficult to plan ahead sometimes. But I appreciate you sharing that with me because I feel like my greatest strength is also my greatest weakness, which is talking too much. Like
That's a
I need a
good thing. That's a
podcast.
good thing.
Bernadotte, how do people get a hold of you? And I always ask everyone this question, like, why should people get a hold of you? What is the ideal contact after the show? Describe that person and then tell them how they can get a hold of you afterwards.
Yeah, so I think for me personally, I never learned this stuff like growing up. So as far as finances, money, real estate, so it was all self-taught. Everything's been from literally just reading books, time on YouTube, podcasting. So I really want to teach others, and the ideal person is a person that is in my place, has a W-2, and is trying to make that first purchase. Hey, I want to buy my first rental. How do I do it? How do I fund it? How do I find it? Hey, yeah, I want to buy an apartment building. How do I do that? And so I'm looking to help others who are in my space when I first started to be able to make that first step, that second step. And so I'm really looking forward to teach after this as well as one of my goals is to be able to teach others in this space. As far as how to reach me, I'm heavily involved on Instagram. So it's Bernardo underscores buys underscores rentals. And so if you go on there, you can find me on Instagram, send me a DM. If you are here in the Orlando area, I also run a few meetups. So send me a DM and join us every month as we chat about real estate here in the area. And so that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to our guests. I think that you have a, like I said, you have a fantastic story. And you've helped me. I love this for my guests. I always think about something a little bit differently when I walk away from it. And it helps my mindset to be able to keep going, to hear my guest stories. And thank you so much for sharing that with the listener. Because I know that's one thing that inspires a lot of people is to see other people who are doing what they want to be doing and hear the good and the not so good so like they can plan ahead on what to expect when they're diving in. So definitely reach out after the show. I would love to talk to you as well. I always talk about how this show is about networking. It's not just so we can have conversations with each other because while they're highly valuable, and I find I get more out of these interactions with the guests than oftentimes the listener does because I get to ask questions that are selfish, right? Things I want to know. But the reason we record it and we put it out there is because we want to talk to you. We want to visit you with you after the show. So be sure to reach out. You can grab me direct to my calendar, investwithemma.com. Go to risecapitalinvestments.co if you want to read more about what we do. And be sure to check out Rise Capital Club, our weekly club at riseclubcapital.com. It's a free club. It meets every Monday night and we just look at deals. So if you want to dive into a spreadsheet, you want to learn how to dive into a spreadsheet, that's what we do there is we just crunch some numbers. And if you have a deal that you want to present to our club, reach out there at riseclubcapital.com as well. And you can submit a deal and book a time that you can come to the club and pitch our club members if you need to raise some capital or you're looking for some partners. So appreciate it. I look forward to talking to you and be sure to reach out to us after the show and tell us all about your next passive income adventure.